The biggest news story of 2016? It's a given. Donald Trump winning the presidency. But secondarily, and not much behind it actually, is the grace that Donald Trump has shown at times after winning. People who said some pretty awful things about him are now going to be serving in his administration. And he's reached out to a lot of people who spent millions and millions of dollars to make sure that he didn't get elected. That, I think, is a pretty big story.
For me, what stood out was kind of frustrating, obviously tied into the election, which I think was the biggest story. But my take on it was the fact that we can't agree on facts anymore, the death of real news, real journalism, and that a fact that somebody doesn't disagree with suddenly becomes a lie, suddenly becomes bias. I don't know how we move forward, and I don't know how you have a rational discussion with people if you acknowledge that 1 + 1 = 2, and they say 1 + 1 = yogurt. We have to have a basis of facts that we're discussing on. And sadly, the death of facts, I think, were really the big story of this year.
One of the biggest events this year was obviously the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, where we actually sent myself, I'm Carter NACKE, the guy's web story you hopefully read, and Jim Sharp. They sent us out to Cleveland to be behind the scenes for the GOP convention for 4 days. And seeing the entire inner workings of how a political party chooses their next leader is absolute insanity. There are thousands of people you don't even think about, from police officers to restaurant workers to camera crews to protesters. Holy moly, were there protesters all over the place. And really seeing that whole process come together to select Donald Trump, who's probably going to be the biggest news story of the year, let's not kid ourselves, was incredibly impressive. And we had Jim Sharp on the floor when Trump was actually nominated. I was in there, like in the actual arena in Quicken Loans, when he made his speech accepting the nomination. It's historical, and KTAR was there.
2016 was a very memorable year in the KTAR newsroom because we introduced a new series called Off Central, telling the stories of people in our community that are so remarkable and interesting that their stories need to be told. One of them, for example, is a pair of siblings, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. They actually write thank you cards, letters to police departments all across the valley and across the country, and they thank officers for all the work that they do. Another has been a Peoria firefighter who actually collects worn-out U.S. flags and pairs them with veterans who have died and are about to be cremated in a way to honor both the flag and that service member. So these are stories, again, that are just so cool. We want you to know about them. It's called Off Central here on KTAR News.
By far, the top story of this year, Donald Trump's master's course on media hype. This man, I think, spent $1.95 on TV advertising in his entire campaign. He didn't have to spend any money. Hills, hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Because Trump knows hype. And Trump taught us all, just keep your name in the news. He was on the 24-hour news cycle. He was on the he was on KTAR almost every single day of the election and spent that much money. And then after the election, the whining, the crying, the sniveling, I'm scared I have to wear a pin. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, they've all skipped civics class. They're acting like we just elected a king. We did not elect a king. And we've gone through 44 presidents prior to Donald Trump, where about half the country didn't want that person to be president. And guess what happened? We survived. It's just 4 years. Chill out. Let's look forward to 2017.